and I suggest you try to meet him at a bar tonight. He has the most amazing stories. He's like one of these warm Scottish persons that you probably already met. If not, he's a perfect example of it. He's always joyful. He always sees opportunity. Please, warm welcome for Ed Gray. So Ed, you've been here before.
It's awesome. Literally in the meaning of the word awesome to be here. Not only have I graduated twice here, once for business and once for ecology, I had the privilege of listening to Gorbachev speak here when he had just announced glasnost and perestroika.
In 1991?
1994, I'm quite old. Used to have hair at that point. But this place has gone through a huge renovation and it's just absolutely splendid. So
we're super grateful that you're having us. We're also super inspired by your work because you're one of the people who built this Innovation Centre for Climate Change here in Edinburgh, but you're also doing work in China. So why don't you take the floor and share what you have learned along the way.
Thanks, Rex.
Big hand.
As I say, I'm quite in awe sitting here, but also part of my job and the team led by Louise West, who has been the real force behind the organisation from the Edinburgh side here, is health and safety. And every time I see Franz and Paris standing next to there, or people with high heels, I start to worry what's going to happen from that perspective. So I'm quite safe behind this plinth. I think it's fine. I think it's quite slimming on me as well, so it's fine. But welcome, world, to Edinburgh. It's fantastic to have you. And as was mentioned before, one of the biggest debates we had was whether November was going to be too cold or too wet. And the weather has been just absolutely fantastic for you when you're going to be transferring between the different buildings. But that's actually different from the fact that the world is on fire. I don't know if you've noticed, but everywhere you go in the world, whether it be Australia, America, Russia, parts of Europe, Scotland had forest fires this year. Scotland, with its fame for its wet country, was on fire. And if that doesn't give you just a pause for a second about global warming, Scotland, one of these wet countries, was on fire. Also, as we're aware, as the planet warms, the ice is melting, the Northwest Passage, or the ice passage in the north, is now open, and it's obviously the corresponding sea rises of massive problems. And there are so many challenges that are currently being debated by the IPCC and what may happen and the results, and we know there's solutions. I was lucky enough to be at COP in Paris and the Innovation Summit, where we were discussing that the vast majority of the solutions are already here. We just need to get the enthusiasm, the organisation, the coordination to implement them. So we're thinking global and we're acting local. Scotland is a small place, but incredibly powerful, as I'll tell you as we go through. But we have to get out there, and that's what you guys are doing here as Climate Launchpad and Ideas. Don't just think about your own region, your own town, your own country. Look beyond that when you're going forward. I'm currently living in Shanghai. Shanghai is an incredible place. For those that you're aware, they are also suffering, experiencing one of the largest population moves that has ever happened to the world. Millions, tens of millions of people are moving from the rural parts into the cities. To the extent they're actually not that sure how big Shanghai is currently, around about 28, 30 million people. And I have a couple of special Chinese visitors here with me today, and they work with me across in Shanghai, Lingang, the city I'm going to speak to you about. And we had the pleasure of speaking to the equivalent of the mayor, the chief executive of Shanghai, Lingang, and I showed them this map, which is a nice picture of Shanghai. And then I showed them what's going to happen when the world warms by 2 degrees. And it took a bit of translation, but it had the necessary impact. And it was incredibly important for him to realize that this is incredibly important, because Lingang is actually below sea level. It's based on reclaimed land. It is officially a smart city and trying to be a smart city, but it is about 1 metre to 2 metres below sea level. If that doesn't give you pause for thought a second time, we'll move on. So why bother listen to me? As Franz was so kind to say, myself and my colleague Andy Kerr and a dedicated bunch of us created the first low carbon ecosystem, certainly in the UK, possibly in Europe, 7 or 8 years ago. We supported intensively about 1,000 small businesses to develop low carbon products and services. Every month, we have more than 1,000 people visit the centre and experience us through events and workshops. But we have policy projects that influence governments around the world, and we've established international centres. So we are an experienced, strong centre which has established an ecosystem working with government, working with large businesses, which is really taking things forward. But I also stand here as a failed entrepreneur. I've set up my own business 2 or 3 times, but I'm not in business just now. And I think it's important to declare that what you're doing is so difficult. There's going to be massive challenges, and I failed, okay? I'm not in business, I'm in a university. I went on that natural pathway, having run a business, to advise businesses about my failures, and then I set up and helped a local ecosystem as well. But working within ECCI and working within a university, I've had the chance to build a low-carbon ecosystem, which is growing, which is strong, and I think that gives us a really strong opportunity to share the experience of what we're now trying to do in China. But before we move on to China, I just want to talk about Scotland, and that most of you here from a business perspective are at the very start of your journey regarding entrepreneurship, and you feel, God, this is such a huge challenge. How could I possibly enact change on this scale? Well, as you've gathered from your flights, Scotland's quite far away. Okay, we're way up to the north, we're quite small, surrounded by sea, but we have had a huge impact on the world. I love this talk about Industrial 4.0. Scotland invented the Industrial Revolution 1.0, okay? We created the steam engine here in Scotland. We started the Industrial Revolution, okay? Scotland is a nation of innovators and inventors. The television, the telephone, the steam engine. This chap with more hair than me down here is called James Watt, and he was responsible for that process going forward. And we have a real responsibility to share. So rather than staying in Scotland, or for that matter staying in Hawaii, or the other places that we presented today, we have to get out there and share this knowledge and share these resources as much as we can. Even if you're as small as Scotland with 5 million people, you can influence what is incredibly complicated, a low-carbon startup ecosystem. I mean, the actors involved, the different funding streams, the challenges, it can be absolutely bamboozling. So where do we start? Where do we start? Yeah, I like that one as well. Any reference to China, I just need to bring it up from that perspective. Well, we start with the Middle Kingdom. And there's many reasons why I think China as the Middle Kingdom is the place that we need to focus on. And there's a range of things. I'll just take you through a couple of them just briefly. First of all, its location. China means the Middle Kingdom. Within a 2-hour flight to Shanghai, you have 3/4 of the world's population. They have a huge amount of influence, as well as their population as well. If you're going to take a solution, and as Climate Kick rightly say, and scale that to enact lasting step change, China is the country to do that. They have a growing influence, especially with our resident idiot in the White House, Donald Trump. I'm actually from New York originally, so I am allowed to say that publicly. It's a bit of a public embarrassment from that perspective, but we do have other leaderships, and the states and the regions are stepping up. And China has that influence, and they're backing that up with the policy and their growth from that perspective. So there is a real culture for change in China, but also there's the supply chain to make that happen. So China for me was the place, from a small country like Scotland, where we had to influence. And going on to that next stage, we then have to ask, well, where in China? China's like an elephant, and where do you take that first bite? Well, Shanghai is the business capital of China. It has a huge amount of influence, and as we know, financing the carbon revolution is incredibly important. So we chose the place called Shanghai Lingang, which was a new city. For those of you who use Ryanair, and yeah, we all do, it's a bit of a thing, but we do use Ryanair. Shanghai Lingang is Ryanair Shanghai, okay? It's about 45 minutes or an hour south of there, but it's a new city. It's in a perfect location, only about 30 minutes from the airport and next to the second largest deep water port in the world. It has 7 free trade zones and industrial zones focusing on smart technologies. So you have large organisations like Caterpillar there, but also over 50,000 small businesses. Because it's a new city, the government are encouraging people to move, primarily by relocating industry, but also by lowering house prices in this growing city, which is around about 250,000 right now. It will be 870,000 in 5 years' time. That's the planning that's going on. So the population there is young, they're dynamic, and they want to work differently. So we thought, if we're going to set up a centre, why don't we set it up in Shanghai, Lingang? So we did. So what you see up there is the Low Carbon College. It's about 30,000 square metres. I don't know what the size of this place is, but it's a lot bigger than this place from that perspective. And that is below the largest delegation ever from the University of Edinburgh to visit another country as part of the development process of developing the Low Carbon College. What was essential about the success of this place was Shanghai Jiaotong University, were our key partner for the University of Edinburgh across in Shanghai. But if it just retained itself as an academic-to-academic partnership, we would not be establishing a startup mechanism. It would be a research partnership. So looking at the objectives, the ones in black, reinforce the aspiration of what we were trying to do at the Low Carbon College. We were trying to set up an ecosystem, set up a global landmark to take this forward, not just simply and importantly create new research or new teaching and talent. This is what a normal academic partnership looks like. I'm not criticising it, but it has a single school working with a single school to do a single subject, okay? Research. This is what our partnership looks like, okay? Before, it works, and after. We have 5 or 6 schools from each university. We have other universities involved. We have partnerships with the city. We have tens of large businesses also involved, and global networks such as Climate Kick and IIES, the International Institute for Environmental Studies, involved. So it is a complex partnership for this ecosystem. It also is not just focusing on research, but on teaching and executive training and innovation. Why is that relevant for startups? Because research creates spin-out companies. It drives innovative and thoughtful new businesses. Okay? Executive training is important to influence larger businesses, as well as smaller businesses, to create new ideas and create entrepreneurship. And of course, innovation, so important from that perspective. What I'm going to do for the next 5 minutes is I'm going to take you through the 5 steps briefly of what we're doing. 3 minutes of what we're going to take through, of what we've done, and then what the result is. So to build a startup ecosystem, one that does not exist in China just now at all, this is what we did. First of all, we built a gateway. If you're going to create a startup mechanism, you need somewhere to land. You need somewhere to base yourself and create partnerships. Secondly, you build a pathway. How are countries and people in Scotland and Hawaii supposed to find you? If you don't know where you are, you need to look at whether that needs to be subsidized financially. Is it event-driven? What about communication in your own language? This is incredibly important. Culturally, we have to make an understanding. China itself can often be seen as quite a frightening place. How can we explain and soften that? This is what this man did, Elon Musk. He has just set up and established his largest Tesla factory in Shanghai, Lingang, as part of a smart mobility cluster. Trump has just introduced some new tariffs. What has Elon done? He's accelerated the build of the factory to build that. That will be partnered by the longest automated electric car track in the world as well. Thirdly, and very challengingly, we have to build a Chinese low-carbon ideation culture. In China, there is limited support for new business ideas. A lot of it involves just the technicalities. So we are there not only to provide more support, but also make that a low-carbon focus. Fourthly, working with Climate Kick and others, we want to introduce you and the best businesses we can to partner with these Chinese businesses and scale them where possible, helping them make the right contacts going forward. And fifthly, making sure that we always work with the best possible. This is the most important challenge in the world. We can't just pick anyone, we need to pick with the best. So the college was launched in September. Just a few weeks ago, we had our first ever Climate Kick event, Climathon, in the Low Carbon College. It had a fantastic, we had the Consul General of Costa Rica standing next to the Vice President of BP China. It was an absolutely fantastic, if slightly surreal event. And as we are, the building is open. We have 10 live research projects actively. We have 100 master's students doing postgraduate studies on energy and environment. We have great new partnerships, and we're launching our new English website in the new year. The new innovation services are on their way, but the big next step for us next year is to build a brand new innovation living lab building, using the best ideas around the world through Grand Challenges to inform and create an innovation building where you can be based and spread that joy into the city going forward. Thanks for listening. I think. Do they want me out? We turned the clock off, so I didn't know how long it was. So I had it all timed down there.
That sounds a bit like Fidel Castro, sort of when the United Nations covered the clock too. I think it's amazing what you're doing. After the lunch, we'll have room for discussion, and we also have someone with a perspective from India, which is very different from China. It's really interesting. But